First of all, I wanted to, since so many of you are now involved in the international scene, I just wanted to say that, you know, the career guidance idea started in the United States in 1908. And of course, after, and a lot of, really almost all the theory that we base our practice on has been done by American theorists. Though, of course, career guidance has spread to Canada and to Europe. But, you know, we have the exciting task right now of introducing this concept to places that have never had the concept before. Some of you have just come back from Rwanda, and some of us will probably be going to Abu Dhabi, if we can learn to say that and spell it. Some of us may be going to Morocco. And you know, these are places in the world that up until this time have not been concerned at all about how their young people figure out what to do when they grow up. And so we have a really exciting thing, I think, in moving this initial American concept to other parts of the world. The idea of career guidance had its beginning with a guy by the name of Frank Parsons in Boston. He was a social worker and figured out that young people needed help with planning their futures. And he opened something called the Vocational Guidance Bureau in Boston in 1908. And he had three simple principles. He said that, first of all, people need to understand their personal characteristics, such as their interests and their skills and their values. Does that sound kind of familiar? We work with that all the time. Secondly, that people needed to understand the world of work. And thirdly, that they should use what he called true reasoning to put those two together. And that still sounds quite a bit like what we're trying to do, doesn't it? So let's go on to look at a definition, a simple definition of career guidance. This isn't an official one. This is one that Bowlsbey made up. But we could define career guidance then as the delivery of a planned sequence of services. Notice the planned sequence of services to assist individuals across the lifespan, K to gray, as we sometimes say, to make informed choices about education and work. Nancy Perry, who used to be the executive director of the American School Counselors Association, liked to say that our schools, unfortunately, provide students with random acts of guidance, ACTS, random acts of guidance. And what we are striving to do with our Kuder career planning products and everything that surrounds them is to help places deliver systematic career guidance to students and adults, not just random acts of guidance. Well, today, then, in my basic, did I not show you that definition before? Okay. In our topics for today, I'm really covering some basics a little bit. Who are the folks that we're serving? Who's our target population? As you go out, especially you salespeople go out to talk to places about the Kuder products. What are some of the objectives, or how do you develop objectives for career guidance services? What's their content? Methods of delivery of those services? Qualifications of people who deliver the services, since we have CAT, the Career Advisor Training, maybe this is a relevant topic right now. Cost effectiveness, expected outcomes, and Jerry's going to tell you what some of those outcomes are currently for Kuder products. And after that, I'll talk a little bit about our theoretical foundation. Okay, target populations. You know, everybody, career development is a normal developmental process, just like emotional development, intellectual development, social development, and so forth. Career development is also a normal developmental process across the lifespan. So everybody needs some help with career planning, though some people need a lot more assistance than others. The people who need more assistance than others maybe have what is called vocational immaturity. That was a phrase used by Donald Super, and he spent a lot of time studying what that was. And vocational immaturity, he concluded, is made up of things like people having time perspective, knowing that what you do today is going to affect tomorrow, people being able to relate present events to future outcomes, learning decision-making skills, having knowledge of the world of work, and gaining an internal locus of control instead of external locus of control, learning that you can control much of life yourself from the inside. And so those were the kinds of things that Super said were vocational immaturity. If Jim Sampson, who's another member of our research team, if he were with us, he would be talking about irrational beliefs. Some people hold irrational beliefs. Women, unfortunately, in the Arab world that we're moving into, because of the culture, are holding irrational beliefs that women cannot do in the workforce what men can do, for example. And so these kinds of things with poor self-concepts and so forth can serve as blockages to people in making good career decisions. And so everybody needs some assistance, but some people need a lot more assistance. And a little bit later when we talk about cost effectiveness, we're going to see that it really helps to sort those people out so we know which services to give to whom. Ideally, everybody would get some assistance from kindergarten on through adulthood, but in all places that's just not practical for cost reasons and other kind of resources. However, the years obviously from grades 8 through 14 are the most critical for making educational and career choices. Well, before you start developing any program of career guidance, you need to have a set of objectives. If you don't have some objectives, Jerry over there can't measure whether you reached them or not. If you don't know what you're trying to do, you don't know how to measure whether you got there or not. So every program of career guidance needs objectives. They usually start with phrases like at the end of this semester, or by the end of the 6th grade, or upon leaving our services, students, people will be able to do such and such. And those such and suches that we want them to do need to be in measurable terms. Not good enough to say must understand the world of work, because how are we going to measure understanding? But if we say by the end of the 6th grade, students who are in our program will be able to describe 6 different work environments. I'm thinking of John Holland's 6 work environments. We can measure that. We can find out if they can describe and name 6 different work environments. And so they have to be measurable. Those objectives have to be clear and understood before we can develop these programs of service, whether that is a customized version of Kuder, Navigator, or Journey, or whether that's a new curriculum. We have to know what the objectives are before we can write the content for that. And then, of course, that content is used, those objectives are used as the yardstick by Jerry to find out if we have met our program objectives and as a basis for accountability and evaluation. Content, of course, programs of career guidance vary widely, but what I've listed here are the absolute essentials of content of a good program of career guidance services. And these are the kinds of things you see in Navigator and Journey, Take Hold of Your Future, Direct Your Future, all of the products which we are selling. First, and really very important, accurate, valid, and reliable assessment, that's where Hoy comes in, of people's interests, skills, or abilities, and their work values. Secondly, a system for organizing a lot of occupations. In the United States, you know, we spend a lot of time and energy keeping up with ONAT, that is our national database of occupational descriptions. There are about approximately 1,000 groups, They are groups of occupations because there's some divisions within those groups. But, you know, if I say to Bethany, okay, Bethany, there are at least 1,000 things you can be. Go out there and figure out which one you want to go into. It's kind of a difficult task. Kind of like going to a grocery store and they didn't organize stuff and they don't have those aisle markers, you know, that tell you what's in each aisle. And so lo and behold, the toilet tissue is right next to the syrup. And right next to that are the artichokes. And, you know, wouldn't that be really confusing to try to get through your shopping list if the aisles were not organized in your grocery store? Similarly, for occupations, we have to have some method of organizing them. We have chosen to use John Holland, and we'll learn more about him later today, John Holland's method of organization of occupations, which is 6 broad groups of occupations, or he calls them work environments. And we'll learn more about that as the day goes on. But that isn't enough still, because we need the third thing here, which is some way to link between this stuff we learned about ourselves and those occupations. So basically what we're trying to do with our assessments that Hoy keeps on improving is say, let's measure something about myself, my interests, my skills, my work values, and now how do I link that to all those 1,000 occupations that are arranged in those 6 groups and come up with a short list for me to explore. We're not saying, and especially you salespeople, when you go out and talk to people, I hope you're not saying, our system can just tell you exactly what to do. It will really tell you what you can be successful in. That's not what we're about. You get yourself in trouble there. What we're about is helping people get a short list of possibilities. So then instead of having to wade through 1,000 groups of occupations, read all those descriptions and try to figure out what might work for me, we're actually saying, look, let's give you some shortcuts to get to a shorter list of occupations, which then you should explore in depth by reading, by experiences where you can see other people doing this on the job, things like job shadowing, some work experience courses, and so forth and so on. And so we're trying to help people make this linkage from our assessment results to occupations and to courses and to majors to help shortcut their process. Of course, once you get that short list, I'm up to the 4th bullet here, we need some really in-depth and accurate and recent and non-biased information about occupations and also about courses and post-secondary majors. What we're running into, you know, as we go international, is that other countries don't have this wonderful database like we have in the United States, which is called ONET, where we spend lots of money keeping that database up to date all the time. But other countries don't even have a list of their occupations or any descriptions of them. So as we move into places like Rwanda and Abu Dhabi and Morocco, we're having to start with the American database and then go through quite a process to try to modify that for which of those occupations do they have in that country and how do their work tasks differ, how does the level of education and kind of education differ, how does the salary differ, and so forth and so on. How does the employment outlook differ? And those are things they don't know, and yet they're very important to good decision making. Then, of course, people at some point need to have some assistance with making a personal plan for themselves, for education and for work. I used to be, it was a couple centuries back, that I was director of guidance at a large high school near Chicago with 12 full-time counselors. Those counselors, probably just like the ones out here in Adele and around us, I always wanted to talk to kids about which college you're going to go to. Real important. But you know, the first thing should be, what are the occupations that I'm thinking about and would seem to fit me and that I want to explore further? next question is, what kind of education do I need for those occupations? And the third question is, which schools actually have a major in that area and strength in that area to prepare me? Never mind their football team. And so, but counselors want to, it seems to be, and parents want to face that backwards. Let's see which college you're going to, and then, you know, later we'll sort of think what to do with that education that you've acquired there that cost us $200,000 or whatever. Okay, and then of course they need help with choosing their major and their educational pathway and their school and where they're going. And later on, when they're ready to go into the workforce and also with adults, they need help about the job market and how to approach it well. So those are the basic content of career guidance. Then we have different ways of getting that assistance to young people and adults. We have one-to-one counseling, which is different from one-to-one advising. We really should reserve the word counseling for people who have at least a master's degree in counseling and are professional counselors. We're training career advisors now, but there is a difference. But obviously, one-to-one help with somebody for maybe 6, 8, 10 sessions is a very nice way to do it, but it's also very expensive. National in the United States, Jerry help me out here, our counselor to student ratio is about 1 to 420? 440, 430. Yeah. So in our high schools, if you didn't hear what Jerry said, the mean is one counselor for 420 to 40 students. And in order to get to that sort of midpoint, there are some that have 1 to 250. That's about the best it gets. And others, like in New York City, that have 1 to about 1,000. And of course, in terms of what those counselors do, guess what? Career guidance is not on the top of their list. These days, what may be on the top of their list is crisis counseling of some kind because of the shooting in the school last week or other things that happened. So crisis counseling is high on their list. After that, it's choosing courses, working out which courses I'll take next year, checking graduation requirements, and so forth. Unfortunately, career guidance falls low on the list of priorities, both because of the interest of those counselors and also because of the quality of training they've had, and also just the reality of the school setting. So as you can see, delivering service one-on-one is not going to be very practical in many, if not most, situations. Then there's something we call group counseling. It's typically 6 to 8 people who meet a number of times in a group and have a skilled facilitator. And that could be about any topic, but it could also be about career planning and what are my interests and how do I want to spend my time in work. And then group guidance is still another approach, which can be 15 to 20 people and tends to be more like this. You know, somebody's lecturing at you or there are group activities, but it's not as, quote, intimate as group counseling. And then, of course, there's curriculum, like our Direct Your Future and many other curricula, which can either be web-based or taught by an instructor in a classroom. And then we get to our favorite, technology-based systems, in our case, web-based delivery. In other places, of course, England, for example, is big in phone service, telephone service, calling in for support and help with career planning. Of course, these days we can use video conferencing through Skype and other things. We can use email, synchronous or asynchronous email. We can use live chat and so forth as we're beginning to develop as a program here at Kuder. And then combinations of all of this. I think a really ideal combination is the use of the Kuder system, perhaps with a group guidance orientation up front so that students know what's in the system and how to use it, then use the system, and then followed by another group guidance session for example, or if time allows by some kind of small group support, can be a very cost-effective way to deliver services. I think especially as we've introduced, we already as a company are offering career development facilitator training, and now you keep hearing about CAT, the career advisor training. Thought it might be helpful to tell you a little bit about the levels of people who deliver career services. The professional level, these are like the folks that Jerry and Hoy and Skip Niles and others train in universities. Are professional master's degree counselors, at least master's degree. Many career counselors and counselors, professional counselors in general, go on to a certificate of advanced study or to a doctorate. And so we have this professional, at least master's degree level counselor. Hopefully they attend a university approved by KCREP, which is an organization that comes up a little bit later here, the Council for Accreditation of Counseling and Related Educational Programs, which is a national organization that sets quite strict guidelines, criteria for universities who are accredited by that organization to offer a master's degree and advanced programs. As a second level, we have certified career development facilitators, which we call CDFs, or if they're working outside the United States, they're usually called global career development facilitators. And they take a curriculum that has to be approved by an organization called the Center for Credentialing and Education, and they have to be taught by an instructor who has been approved by the National Career Development Association. The third level, which we are introducing, I think, as a level, is career advisors and master career advisors, which is a new level of training that we are proposing. If we look at the professional counselors, they have, as I said, a master's degree or above. They typically attend a university that has been approved, whose program has been approved and certified. There is very precisely required coursework, supervised practicum. There's a required national exam that you have to pass, and there's a required continuing education requirement for them. The career development facilitators, or the CDFs, have to complete a 120 clock hour program, and some of you in this room have done that curriculum. Kuder is one of the offerers of the program, and it's based on 12 competencies, the same 12 competencies that the master's degree counselors follow. And the curriculum can be offered by various organizations, but it has to address these 12 competencies, and it has to be approved by this organization called the Center for Credentialing and Education. Has to be taught by an instructor trained and approved by the National Career Development Association. It may be taken largely online. It must have some face-to-face work with a teacher. There is no certifying exam, and completers may be certified if they pay a fee through CCE. Now, the level that we're introducing is the level of career advisor, and it calls for the completion of a 30 clock hour curriculum based on 10 of the 12 competencies that I mentioned before that are required for counselors and CDFs. The curriculum was written by Kuder staff, yours truly primarily, and is being taught by someone hired by Kuder to teach it. It can be either studied totally face-to-face or partially or largely web-based, has been also developed over here by Bree, but still requires a day and a half now of face-to-face. Just a day, 1 day of face-to-face instruction, and the remainder can be taken by web. Participants currently receiving a certificate of completion, which is different from certification. And Bree and Phil, and I don't know who else, working hard to establish a certifying body so that eventually this curriculum will be certified. Kuder can't certify it. It has to be supposedly an uninterested body of people who look at this curriculum, approve it, say it will work for reaching the objectives it's supposed to work. So those are the levels. There's one more. The Master Career Advisor, which we're also offering, these folks take the same curriculum that's being offered to the career advisors, plus an additional textbook chapter which addresses some of the management kinds of things that a master career advisor would do. And they have to write an extensive paper. We only have 2 of these now. We have the first 2 candidates, and since I'm monitoring them, I can tell you they're having a lot of trouble with this first task, which is to write an extensive paper. Ask them either in a work setting where you currently are or one that you wish you could be in, plan and extensively the career guidance services that you're going to provide. Tell us about your target population, develop the objectives for the program, tell us exactly how you're going to reach each of those objectives and how you're going to evaluate them. Make a to-do list from today until the first day you deliver the program, and basically it's following an outline that's in one of the chapters of the Career Advisor training. And so the 2 I have are having difficulty getting through that thought process. It's basically planning your program services up front is what they have to do. And then a second assignment is they have a description of several problems that could happen. Some of them are ethical problems that a career advisor might be breaking some ethics or considering breaking some ethics, and what would a master career advisor be doing to try to deal with such problems. And so they have those extra assignments. My only concern here is, again, for the sales folks, I don't want you to go out and say, hey, if you take our 30 clock hour course, you will be a superb career counselor. There are different kinds of duties, different kinds of skills that people at these 3 levels have. And the people that we train as career advisors should be able to do an excellent job in supporting the Kuder system wherever it's installed. But you don't want to oversell them as people who are high-level counselors who can engage in one-to-one counseling of all kinds and so forth. And so that's my one concern about our not overselling that program, but being realistic about the skills that these people will have. Inevitably, whether we're in Adele or Chicago or Rwanda, we face the question of cost effectiveness. You've probably noticed that schools don't have a lot of money these days, and state systems don't have a lot of money, and countries don't have a lot of money. And especially, at least in our country, if something's going to get cut, it isn't the sports program, is it? Maybe the library, maybe music, Jerry, and guidance. And so cost effectiveness is always a big question. And so the goal, of course, is to provide the level of service that each student or person in the target population has. Remember way up front I said everybody needs some help. Some people need a lot more help than others. And now the trick related to cost effectiveness is to try to figure that out and provide web-based service, self-help. Web-based service is basically self-help unless we connect our career coach, Kuder coach program with it. And so some can do self-help just fine. Others need some help, and others need a lot of help. And so the goal is to try to sort those out and provide the level of service that each one needs. So individuals should be screened in some way. Because of writing them, helping Bethany and many, 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 many others write a proposal for Morocco recently. Jim Sampson, who's another member of our faculty here, sent me both his book and also the procedures used at Florida State. Florida State, as well as Penn State, those are probably the two exemplary career centers in the United States, the most exemplary ones. And so with what Sampson sent me from Florida State, they have a questionnaire, an intake interview that a trained person does with each person who walks in the Career Center. And basically, as a result of that interview, they sort people out in three categories. People who would be able, totally through self-help, to make informed career choices. And those people they have several of the web-based systems there. They use those systems, also books and all kinds of things that you can go use yourself. And so they send those people off to work on their own. Then they have a second level of people that need minimal support. I need somebody who's roving around the Career Center and says, oh, let me help you find how you can take the interest assessment in the Kuder system, or let me help you find this video, or whatever. And so they need minimal assistance. And then they have a third level that they call the case management level. Those are people who need one-on-one counseling or one-on-one support, advising from somebody. And so through such a simple technique as an interview, people can be sorted out to go to different levels of service. And of course, that helps us a great deal with the question of how cost-effective can we make career guidance. Bill likes to talk about being able to use the Kuder system for the price of a can of Coke, right? So for these people who are either in the self-help category or self-help or plus a little support in the middle category, they can have it for the price of a can of Coke. If they need a little assistance, we'll have to add a little bit to that, Bill. But that's still very cost effective. The people who need one-on-one service, that gets most expensive. The people who can profit from a group curriculum or from group guidance, those methods combined with the Kuder system are very cost effective. Well, I'm going to look at, in general, what does the literature say that we should expect as outcomes from well-planned career guidance services. And then Jerry's going to tell us about some of his findings. Short term, people who go through this process, have a good career guidance systematic program, end up having an education and career plan to follow. That doesn't mean they don't change sometimes or can change at any time, but somebody who has a goal always moves faster and better than somebody who doesn't have a goal. So just developing that plan creates a goal to work toward, even though changes may occur in it. Improved school attendance. The literature indicates that that happens often, and that would be because kids suddenly begin to make some relationship between their algebra course and something they might do when they go to work. And they begin to realize that school does have some benefit for their future. Lower percentage of school dropout, both at the high school level and at the post-secondary level. Far fewer changes at the post-secondary level in the selection of a major field. And that means that people might get through college in 4 years, parents might spend less money, people might be less confused, they might get to the job market faster, and some good things like that. And also the fact that students in general from career guidance can make that connection between school and work. Long term, and I'm sure that Phil talks about some of these things more as he goes to other countries, but longer term and on a grander scale, people are more satisfied if they are doing things they like to do. If many of you are new to Kuder, if you are now being able to do things you really like to do, and you have the skill to do, and that you value as important, you should be having job satisfaction. And for those people, they have greater job satisfaction and therefore greater life satisfaction. There's so much relationship between how happy we are in work and how happy we are at home in terms of our lives in general. Of course, for employers, it doesn't make any difference whether it's Morocco or the United States. We hear over and over again, there are lots of jobs that employers need to fill if they could just find the people who were trained for them and had the motivation for them and had the personal skills, or what's being called soft skills, to enter those jobs, even when the economy is poor. And if they don't find people, then they go elsewhere outside the United States to try to get them, or those jobs just go unfilled. So for employers, we hope that our system will provide an improved talent pipeline. We're getting young people in that pipeline whose interests and skills match those jobs that are available out there. And when those students get to those employers, they are trained, they are motivated, they're interested in what they're doing, and hopefully they're going to have job satisfaction. All of that together produces great economic gain. I've seen some figures for the United States calculating, if you have productive workers who are making a good salary and are contribute to a tax base and to the budget of the United States or whichever country, that is a better situation than having relatively more people that are on public welfare and being supported. And so it has the end result also of improved economic prosperity for a nation.